Hi, I'm Nick Palmisano,
And I'm Matt Finney.
and this is the Bad News Network. If you missed our live BNN coverage of the debates, go back and watch it, or don't. I'll cut to the chase. It was better than the first one, but not good. The moderator, Kristen Welker, was on point, making sure neither candidate acted like a total a-hole. Matt and I rated the debate as a virtual tie. Biden opened strong, hitting the president on COVID, which is by far his weakest area. Despite what the president has stated, America has done far worse than most of the world when it comes to the pandemic. The good news is that American medicine has done an exemplary job of keeping the death toll low for people that have come down with the virus. This includes compared to other countries. We've really done a pretty solid job, coming in at around 2.7%. That puts us kind of in the top 10. The bad news is that our overall numbers just keep rising and rising and rising, while the rest of the world seems to have the disease under control and is basically shrinking on a daily basis, with some countries essentially having no COVID. The president came back strong in the middle, though, with a lot of different jabs on some of Biden's various policies, but really hitting him hard on his crime bill. Now, don't get me wrong, they were both imperfect by a wide margin with a lot of rambling, incoherent responses. The president had a couple of gaffes. One where he was talking about pollution seeping from the ground at the base of wind turbines and killing all the birds. And another where he said he was the least racist president since Lincoln, and maybe even less racist than Lincoln, which was a little weird. Biden, not to be outdone, decided to close out the debate by telling the world that he was going to end the oil industry, which, is kind of a big deal. It was a better debate than the first debate, so that's saying something. Matt likened it to the Hagler-Sugar Ray Leonard fight, where one guy landed more punches, the other guy did more damage, and in the end, whoever you wanted to win is probably the guy that you saw winning. Matt and I don't really give a shit about either of these two, and we had the thing split. I thought Trump did better because, as I always tell you, I believe that perception equals expectations minus reality. Trump calmed himself way down from the first debate, didn't interrupt, and had some solid points throughout. While that would have been the bare minimum for a presidential candidate a decade ago, in 2020, that's stellar work. And I expected a little more from Biden. I think he missed some opportunities and bullshitted a little too much even on his wins. It bothers me every time when he says that Trump is responsible for 220 million deaths. The entire world got hit. He's responsible for the deviation from the mean. Likewise, when he talked about the economy tanking under Trump. The world's economy tanked. Trump, again, is responsible for the deviation from the mean. There is no part of me that thinks that a Democratic response would have been vastly different from President Trump's response in the first 3 to 4 months. So I kind of blanch when I hear that we would have kicked COVID's ass under a different president. American presidents do not like to the economy. American presidents do not like to tell Americans what they have to do because we hate it. Anyway, I thought that the president edged the vice president just barely based on the idea of performing better than expectations. Matt thought Biden did better throughout with tighter, cleaner answers and less rambling. And I agree with him. In a pure debate, Biden probably edged the president. But people make decisions off of perception and recency bias, and I thought Trump closed stronger. In any event, this debate likely changed very few minds. Biden currently has a commanding lead in the polls of 8%. As a comparison, at this point, Hillary Clinton's numbers had shrank from 7% to about 5%. Also hurting the president is that many undecided voters are not interested in even voting. Neither candidate is really compelling for undecided voters, and traditionally when that happens, the challenger receives 2-to-1 odds in favor from undecided voters. But there's other factors in this election that are very interesting. While liberals have no concept of how anybody could vote for the president, they also fail to see what's on the other side because they support many of the policies that are there. So another poll came out exploring this data. Turns out that most independents really hate the president and his personality, but really fear Biden's policies. In particular, independents are worried about Biden's policies on the economy, taxes, the Second Amendment, and court packing. For Trump, independents just don't like him. They don't like his personality, his persona, his character. But then there's another factor. More polling shows that because of the increased shaming of people that support the president, fewer people are willing to admit, even to an independent pollster, that they're going to vote for the president. And estimates are that 10% of Trump voters will not admit that they're voting for the president. So when you add all these wrinkles together, it kind of says, we don't really know what the hell is going to happen on election night. Bottom line, Matt and I plan on dropping 24-hour BNN live coverage for the election, and we're pretty sure that we're going to go to bed not knowing who's president. Matt and I are going to like you no matter who you vote for. At the end of the day, try to remember that neither of these candidates gives a shit about you, and neither of them is going to have a significant impact on your life. You're living in the best time to be alive in human history, in the best place. You're extremely fortunate. There's more opportunity than there ever has been. Despite what the news tells you, there's more tolerance, less racism, and a greater desire for equality than there ever has been in human history. This is a great time to be alive. Try to be optimistic. This too shall pass.
Yesterday, the Republicans voted 12-0 to advance ACB to the next round of Who Wants to Be a Judgillionaire? The Democrats didn't show up because they were boycotting. The nomination will now head to the full Senate. Barrett's road to SCOTUS now seems inevitable as she only needs a simple majority. There's expected to be a procedural vote Sunday, after which her nomination will be subject to up to 30 hours at the hands of the Spanish Inquisition, which was unexpected. She will then answer 3 questions, not 2. That is, unless providing there be a following question resulting in the number 3. Neither shall it be 4, as 3 has been determined to be the right amount of questioning for a SCOTUS nominee. 5 is right out! After all this, the Senate will proclaim that it's down with ACB and confirm Barrett to the Supreme Court on Monday. Murder hornets have once again evaded an elite team of scientists trying to track them to their evil lair. The first murder hornet captured by the scientists was affixed with a GPS tracker with glue. That murder hornet managed to scrape the tracker off and evade them. This week, the scientists decided to up the ante using an elite and elegant solution straight out of science fiction. They decided to tie a tracker to him using dental floss. Foolproof, right? Wrong! It appears this murder hornet has learned a thing or two from the cartels. He flew into a densely wooded area at ground level and shook the tail of the scientists. Those scientists believe that there are maybe 2, possibly 3 murder hornets' nests somewhere in the greater area. And as such, they've concocted a master plan to locate and destroy said nests. One of them will put on fake antennae and a fake mustache and introduce himself as Brian, a murder hornet from out of town. While known for murder, the hornets are also known for their gracious hospitality. It's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it plays out.
In a show of solidarity this week, France projected giant cartoons from Charlie Hebdo on a government building to protest the beheading of a middle school professor. Mayor Carol Delga said there must be no fear in the face of enemies of democracy. The French police are conducting dozens of raids associated with radical Islam after the beheading. Mr. Patty, the victim, showed his middle school class images of the Prophet Muhammad, which is against the Muslim religion. Before doing so, he permitted Muslim students to leave as he did not want to put them in a position where they were going against their religion. For his heinous crime, he was captured, beaten, and decapitated with a knife. France's response has been aggressive to say the least, starting with raids at dusk, breaking up radical mosques, breaking up nonprofits that support elements of Islam, and actually kicking 236 people out of the country. Most of France is asking for these resolutions and more, as this action has reopened the wound of the 2015 Charlie Hebdo massacre. But others are asking, what does this do to French democracy? Others still have de Gaulle to blame the French teacher, saying he should have never shown those pictures. I'm gonna stop you right there. These murdering a teacher and cutting off his head with essentially a steak knife makes me want to draw pictures of the Prophet Muhammad. We're not going to do it because we have Muslim friends and it's a dick move. But people need to be able to do it for the same reason that they need to be able to burn the American flag, because we have freedom of expression. There is a compact with all immigrants, and I say this as the son of immigrants. No one is asking you to change your religion or to change who you are or to change your cultural beliefs within certain parameters. You have to uphold the rule of law. You have to abide by key elements of Western values and general human decency. You can't murder people you don't like because of your stupid beliefs. And if your belief is you can murder people because they drew a picture, it's stupid. I don't care. Don't try to make any other argument dumb. You can't murder people over a picture and take part in Western democracy, period. If you do, you're going to bring down an unfair world of on people that share your religion but aren't I really feel for the majority of totally innocent Muslims in France right now, and I hope that you're not unjustly punished or targeted. But I got a feeling that France is going to get fugly.
Bill Cosby was smiling for his most recent mugshot, and the internet is both happy and sad. Basically, half the people are happy to see him in prison, and the other people have started a hashtag, Free Bill. Cosby is serving 3 to 10 years for rape and is 83 years old. Word on the street is he hasn't received a single Jell-o pudding pop in his entire time served. His frequent requests that he would like to talk to you to the cafeteria staff have gone unanswered.
NASA's OSIRIS-REx satellite landed on an asteroid 207 million miles away from Earth in NASA's first touch-and-go or TAG event. This was apparently super hard, and this thing, which is like the size of a van, had to land in this tiny space that was about as big as 2 parking spots, which was inside of a slightly larger thing about the size of a tennis court, all while the asteroid was spinning. Most people can't even parallel park, but NASA's knocking that out 207 million miles away. Anyway, they McConaughey'd the landing, and this thing, boom, touched, went, and now it's back to spinning around that asteroid, getting ready to kick off back to the Earth, where we're going to see it again in 2023. We'll get to check out that sample. Bam! NASA is awesome. Let's keep doing smart guy space stuff. It's one of the only redeemable things our government has left.
MAGA 2020! No, that is not me endorsing a side. That is literally President Trump's Twitter account password. Or at least it was. Last week, a Dutch security researcher was putzing around doing cybersecurity stuff when he decided to test the security of Donald Trump's Twitter password. The cyber sleuth Victor Gevers was one of 3 men responsible for hacking Trump's Twitter pre-election in 2016. This time, after 3 failed attempts, he casually just winged one out there and just typed in MAGA 2020 exclamation point. Boom! Gevers had navigated the cyber labyrinth of President Trump's Twitter password. Kind of a straight line. He then reached out to every American agency, Trump's immediate family, and even Trump himself to no avail. No one responded. He then reached out to some of his local resources, which began this long game of telephone, which ended in the American Secret Service reaching out to Gevers and politely asking, how did he do it? Gevers then introduced them to Enigma, a 12-year-old Dutch girl who just guessed. The president now has 2-step verification, a much more solid password, and just to be safe, a padlock around his phone. Gevers, for his part, was given a thank you and allowed to live. But the lesson was learned. You never know what concoctions may be baking in the Dutch oven of cybersecurity.
You may remember last week when we touched upon CERN scientists thinking about opening up a black hole to an alternate universe. Not to be outdone, a bunch of archaeologists in Egypt have come upon a vast necropolis of mummified remains that they want to open up. Full details are not yet available, but apparently a huge number of sarcophagi, a word I didn't even realize existed until just now, was found. Zombie apocalypse, anybody? Do we have Indiana Jones on standby? What about Brendan Fraser at least? I know it's not the same, but like he's encountered these things like 3 times. He's got to know something. The area is home to one of Egypt's oldest pyramids, and the entire area was once the royal capital. While I'm not an Egyptian expert, I suspect that if the archaeologists looked a little closer, there is probably something inscribed on the wall that is a vague and scary curse. I look forward to it scouring the land, and frankly, it puts me in the mood for Halloween. But seriously, black holes, mummies, what's next? Godzilla?
Japan just released a bunch of radioactive waste into the ocean. Jeffrey Toobin, an analyst for CNN and The New Yorker, was suspended after a Zoom incident this week. Toobin managed to do the thing that we've all been terrified of doing since this whole pandemic kicked off and Zoom meetings became an actual thing. He forgot to turn off the Zoom meeting. After a short break from their 10-minute long strategy meeting with some of his coworkers, Toobin could be seen, well, playing the five-knuckle shuffle, choking the chicken, spanking the monkey, flogging the dolphin, beating the bishop, lubing the tubin, cranking the crane, whacking the kraken. Regardless of what you want to call it, it was seen and it happened. Apparently Toobin was under the impression that he had muted the Zoom call. The video was shut off right before he took himself on his own little self-guided tour. The worst part about it is none of his colleagues spoke up and told him that his Zoom camera was on and it wasn't unmuted. None of them wanted to interrupt him, I guess. Very polite. It's kind of like that age-old adage of never wake a sleepwalker. Since then, Toobin has been put on leave from his position both at CNN and The New Yorker. Now, I know what you're thinking. It was just a one-time thing, little crank one out and get back to the meeting. We've all been there. Maybe this guy isn't so bad. Well, maybe just wait a second, because in typical 2020 fashion, it just gets worse. In 2009, Toobin fathered a child out of wedlock, told the kid he wasn't his, had to take a DNA test, turns out the kid was. There's also a lot of rumors that he's sexually aggressive towards female coworkers. But according to CNN, Toobin will be back to work as soon as his name's out of the headlines, as he's an integral part of their team. Our thoughts and prayers are with the individuals who had to watch this 60-year-old man go to town on himself.
And finally, in Florida Man news, 26-year-old Nathan Garisto was charged with attacking his girlfriend with a pumpkin. Police were called to a domestic dispute in Largo, Florida, where they arrived to see Gusto and his 29-year-old girlfriend covered in pumpkin guts. Apparently, his name was Garisto, but it's 2 a.m. and I don't want to say the line again. Apparently, Mr. Garisto had become intoxicated and refused to leave. After further demands to vacate the premises from his girlfriend, Garisto had had enough. He reportedly hurled the Halloween hand grenades in a scene that would have made Peter LaFleur proud. Authorities described the scene as a cornucopia of blood and gourd. Garisto told the police it was his intention to throw the pumpkin at the house, but she was in the way. He was arrested on charges of domestic battery. However, it was reported that since the incident, Garisto and his girlfriend have squashed the dispute. Garisto and his girlfriend agreed that the thought of going to jail for such an act was pulp-posterous. And with that, I'm Nick Palmisano.
And I'm Matt Finney.
And this is the Bad News Network. Our news is at least as bad as the news you're getting already, and just remember that if you are a fort, try not to hit up OnlyFans models using that fort's Twitter account. Speaking of OnlyFans, you can always hit up us on our OnlyFans account to see crappy behind-the-scenes footage of BNN and other random things that we're doing at Nick and Matt on OnlyFans. And of course, you can always get 25% off at rangerup.com using code BNN. Have a great weekend.